Well, let's...
Inside this room, all of my dreams become realities, and some of my realities become dreams.
What in the wide, wide world of sports is going on here? Alive! It's alive! It's alive!
You are listening to The Wilder Ride, getting wilder by the minute. Here are your hosts, Alan Sanders and Walt Murray.
Welcome back, everyone, to The Wilder Ride, getting wilder by the minute, a podcast where we break down and celebrate the films of Gene Wilder 1 minute at a time. Our first film that we're looking at in this season number 1 is Young Frankenstein. I'm your host, Alan Sanders.
And I'm your co-host, Walt Murray.
And joining us back again, a couple of private detectives who are helping us on this Scooby-Doo mystery of ours. We've got Matt Gray and Ben Peacock. Welcome back, guys.
Thanks for having us. Glad to be here.
Yeah, don't speak for me, but yeah, I'm glad to be here too.
Such an idiot.
Sorry, we were having an argument before and it just bled over into the podcast.
Long day at work?
Oh, you have no idea. We had to have an emergency cuddle session. It was...
Okay, stop. This was not a lover's quarrel.
Well. Oh, wait, is this all recording? You didn't hit record, did you, Alan?
I can't wait to play this at work.
Walt's manhandling the table. There is some comedy gold, and we didn't even get a minute into this thing.
See, I'm telling you, Matt can't help himself.
It's all right. I'm just glad I've got the desk between me and him at this point, because I know I'm the fresh meat in this room.
Yeah. Desks can't stop me.
Well, when we last left our trio of investigators of their own, Dr. Frankenstein, Inga, and Igor, they had stumbled into a room where they had found a violin, and it starts this minute, number 33. It starts with Igor, "It's still warm," and it ends with Gene Wilder, at least it sounds like Gene Wilder, coming off screen with the line, "And yet so simple." And in the meantime, we've still got a mystery to solve. So let's go through from the very opening shot with the violin moment, where they look at the violin and it's still warm.
Yeah. Yeah, again, a great Igor line here. Touching the violin and saying it's still warm. And the further we go, his comedy is so unique because some of it, it doesn't even make any sense, but it's hilarious. Some of it is an absolute great shot at Dr. Frankenstein, but he really just captures these scenes.
I think, and I don't know if I said this on the podcast yesterday or if I said it between, there's times I have to go back and rewatch the whole minute because I'm watching Marty Feldman the whole time.
Yeah, or laughing.
Well, he's so into it. If you watch it, this scene, when he's looking around, his eyes it's almost like he's looking for things and then something catches his eye. And then he's always in the moment. He's not drifting. He's not daydreaming. He's in his own little performance.
And I wonder how much of this is scripted and how much of this is just Marty Feldman, and they cut him loose on screen.
He kind of reminds me of my dad, like when a squirrel runs through the yard. My dad kind of twitches and looks, and then he forgets everything you've been talking about. So I'm going to start calling my dad Marty and see if he picks up on it. Or Igor. Because he does kind of have a hump, too.
I'm guessing the Igor might be less transparent. It might be a little more obvious.
Right.
I feel like you're forgetting how dangerous your dad is, and if he listens to this, we're never going to see you again.
It's another perfect minute of you spend so much of it watching Marty Feldman's facial expressions.
Absolutely. And, in a second here, we have him, everybody looking off screen, off camera. And Inga first looks, and then Igor looks, and she's looking at him. And then he's looking offset. And then he turns around and looks back at her, and she looks back at Dr. Frankenstein. And it again is him kind of having that puppy dog kind of relationship with the two of them. He is really just a master. He captures this scene unbelievably. I don't think anybody else could have played this part.
Well, before we get to them doing the wave, I want to ask you a question about why Gene Wilder, why Dr. Frankenstein decides to use the delivery, the style of almost shouting his line. He's not shouting it, but he's elevated and raised his voice when he says, "I don't know, but whoever it was barely finished putting out his cigar." why is he delivering the line that way?
That's a good question, and I wonder if it was intentional or an actor's choice, or...
I think it was intentional as a character. I'm going to tell you what I think. I've got my ideas. I'm just seeing what you guys thought.
Well, Alan, what do you think?
Oh, you see, I asked the question. I get to. Matt, what about you?
I mean, I guess he's trying to say if anyone else is in the room, whoever was there just previously, if they're in the room right now, he's sort of letting them know, like, I don't know. If someone was just here, they must have just left. Sort of nodding to the fact that if you're hiding in here, come out, please.
Yeah, I definitely didn't pick up on that, but that's why you're a better private dick than I am.
I'm sorry, is that my profession?
You're just a better dick than I am. Never mind.
No, I'm not even a private dick. I'm just a
Because the way I hear it, maybe it's because being a parent when you're playing that hide and seek is like, I don't know if anyone's in here. You try to get them to giggle and reveal their location. It sounds just like that. It's that little over the top. It's, I know someone might be listening. And so I think he's trying to maybe flush out or if the person is hiding somewhere, they're in earshot. And he's wondering if they'll hear his voice asking that question, whoever it was, barely finished putting out his cigar, as if we caught another clue. You might want to come clean now.
Well, I think this lends credence to your view on this versus mine, because, like I said, I've always had the presupposition that whoever it was had already kind of moved on out of the room and out of view, but you may be right. They may really be looking for that person to be stuck in there with them.
Or at least he feels there's no way they could have gotten out. He thinks there's no way out of here. You know, there's only a one way in so far, and the only other exit we see is locked. It's just, I think it's an interesting choice to kind of take that tone of voice, almost again like a parent figure looking for a child playing a game.
Yeah, and they really have, he has been chasing the person. He's trying to find out who the violinist was, and he didn't intend to come find the laboratory or, as we'll find out here in this minute, the private library. He's looking for whoever's playing the music, and that person is really leading them by the nose right into this chamber.
I have a question. As we look at this minute, again, before we get to the wave, we see an insert of the cigar still smoldering in the ashtray. And then suddenly we're back to the three of them. What's Terry Gar got in her hand?
Oh, the candle.
The candle.
No. Other hand.
Oh, is it the cigar?
Oh, is it the cigar?
How did it jump into her hand?
Uh-oh. Maybe they don't pay attention after all.
So the cigar is not in her hand at the very beginning. We cut down, it's in the ashtray. Bam! Now it's no longer in the ashtray, it's in her right hand.
Wow.
Good catch.
It's a jumping cigar.
I hadn't seen that either.
Maybe it's a Mexican jumping cigar.
Or has been there.
Oh, man.
And this movie takes a really crazy twist.
Why did she pick up the cigar? I mean, we don't see her pick it up, but it's in her hand.
I think my only thought could be, because that's because the next scene is a cutaway of the camera looking at the cigar, I'm assuming this shot where she's holding the cigar, it was the shot before where they say, oh, look, a cigar, and she picks it up, but we
never see her do that action.
Yeah, but I'm assuming that was a part of
something left out.
Yeah, they cut that to insert this image of the cigar.
Is there anything in the script about that?
No, there is something, though, that we did skip, but you can find on the bloopers and behind the scenes, because obviously a cigar is going to leave you with cigar breath. Mm-hmm. And there's a scene that was left out where Dr. Frankenstein goes to Igor, let me smell your breath.
Oh, I have seen that.
And then Marty Feldman goes, for like 10 seconds, and Gene Wilder just cracks up and cannot deal with Marty Feldman's character.
I'm sure no matter how many takes they had on that scene, there was no way.
So there must be an outtake here where either he picked it up and then handed it to Inga when he says, let me smell your breath, knowing, oh wait, it's a cigar. Cigars smell nasty. So hands it to her. But of course, that piece gets cut out for a little bit. Either they get rid of the gag because they didn't think they needed it, or they never had a good take where Gene Wilder couldn't hold it together.
I would definitely say that's a big possibility.
So we've got the cigar now in her hand. She's got the unlit candle in her other hand. And then Gene Wilder looking around, realizing no one's responded to the, well, whoever it is. And he then brings his voice down and says, so what is this place? And I love Igor's response.
Yeah, Igor. Oh, the music room? And he plucks the violin. Like, look, dummy, you know what room this is. Everybody knows what room this is.
It's just music room, bling. And then he immediately like stops the string from humming by putting his hand there, and he looks around like, is that right?
His dog-like quality showing once again.
Am I in trouble?
So the next line is you've got Inga saying, there's nothing in here but books and papers. And he says, I wonder. And then all of a sudden he turns around. It is. This was my grandfather's private library. Look at this. And I think this is where, Walt, you've got that joke you talked about where they do the wave. He looks at Inga. Inga looks at Igor. Igor looks off screen left. Then he looks back screen right, looks back at Inga, and Inga looks back at Doctor.
Yeah. That's to me, a very Mel Brooks kind of joke, kind of over-the-top physical humor.
Yeah, because it's like, if you
Nonsensical.
added a noise effect of head turning, like, whoop, whoop, whoop,
Yeah.
whoop, whoop.
Yeah, that's kind of almost what you would expect seeing that.
You know, I might be wrong here, but it seems like there's a scene like that in Spaceballs, where they're on the deck of the ship. A very similar scene. I have to go back and check, but just kind of I kind of visualized
Are
that.
you suggesting Mel Brooks might repurpose his own comedy bits?
No, never.
I think we've covered that one, too.
We have.
No, I think you're right. Now that you mention that, I'm going to have to go and rewatch Spaceballs now. Thanks.
Oh, darn.
That's terrible. Yeah, but I think you're right.
Like on the deck of the ship, maybe, but I kind of see that. But
Yeah,
maybe as a little homage.
that's interesting. I'll have to go back and look at that.
I'm going to go
for
with
tomorrow's
sure.
episode. Yes. Yes, I remember that vividly.
As he's slowly coming to the realization this must be the private library he was asking about to Frau Blucher earlier when first arriving at Castle von Frankenstein, he then turns around and sees a book on the table that he happens to notice for the first time and yells, "Look! Look at this!" And it cuts to another insert of the title, which I think is hysterical because if you're going to name a book on how you did it, calling it How I Did It is a pretty good indication of what you did.
Yeah. Yeah, he's really leaving nothing to the imagination here. It really speaks for itself.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would have named that title for my book as well, for my, stalking thing as the episode before. It's like How I Did It, what car I chose.
How I peered through your windows.
It's kind of like the whole O.J. Simpson thing, right? You know,
Wow.
How I would have done it.
Yeah.
Let me explain
Theoretically,
every
of course.
single detail.
Theoretically.
Had I,
Including where the
hypothetically speaking, uh-huh.
Nudge,
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, know what I mean?
Clarify that, Matt.
Alleged. My bad.
Thank
my bad. Innocent until proven guilty, and that glove sure as hell didn't fit.
What I like about some of the detail of production design, remember very early on, the very first minute when they open the coffin and there's a box with a seal on it. We see the seal again when Falkstein is taking it into the classroom.
Right.
Same seal now on the book, the Frankenstein
That's right.
seal.
The family seal.
And I love that. I love just the little tiny detail like that on the book of How I Did It by, of course, Victor Frankenstein.
Yeah, and I just love that they use such an absurd title for that book. That again, is a big Mel Brooks fingerprint.
I think this is the first time, as soon as we get the title, we've realized the weather phenomenon in Transylvania is a little odd. Lightning and thunder will suddenly punctuate a sentence or a surprise moment with no rain and no indication of clouds in the sky. It'll thunder and lightning indoors or outdoors, wherever it needs to be. Isn't this the first time we actually see lightning bolts since the movie started?
I think so.
Not the credits though, but just since we actually got into the narrative.
We saw a little flash when they were in the cart wagon.
But I don't think we ever saw cracks of lightning.
I don't think we have.
And somehow, upon finding this book, and I do kind of like it, because the lightning has always been more of an ominous thing. This is the first time we get the sense of, oh, that's right. Frankenstein brought his monster to life through electricity and harnessing lightning.
Yeah, really well placed. And it, again, gets you back to that 1931 Frankenstein feel, getting us back to the monster movie and reestablishing where we are and what we're doing.
I'm sure you guys talked about this in one of the previous episodes, but I love that it was done in black and white. Just the contrast of the lightning here, and then how the nostalgia feeling for the original and all the other Frankenstein movies. I think we said this on one of the other shows. This could have been. It is a horror film. With as a comedy. It's a car comedy.
Let's not go down that road. We're going to be here for a while.
But yeah, it's and I think that may be the first time. It kind of goes to the how the character evolves, right? How he's so ashamed at first, and he's gradually, becoming a part of this history, and now finding the book, and now how the lightning goes back to the creation of the original monster. And
Well, we've talked about this before. You guys ought to kind of weigh in on this too. Originally, the studio wanted them to shoot this in color. And they said, absolutely not. This is a black and white film. They went back and forth, even changed studios over it. And they said, we'll release it in black and white, but we're shooting it in color, which they did not bite on, thankfully.
No.
So would it be the same movie? Would it be as good if it were shot in color?
No way.
No.
I don't
And
think so.
especially after, like I said, after you showed me those screenshots of the original, it would have been a completely different experience seeing those screenshots after I've seen this movie and been like, oh yeah, okay. But yeah, they shot it the exact same way, all to the T, so.
I think it would
Yeah.
have been cheaper.
Much better choice.
I think it just would have had a cheaper feel to it and kind of a knockoff feel instead of this is the next chapter in the Frankenstein story.
Yeah, I agree. The black and white adds such a great touch to the movie.
And this was at a time, again, the studio did not want to do it. Neither the first studio, Columbia, or 20th Century Fox. They said they would, but they were trying very hard to have a color version. And Mel Brooks said, I was worried that if I did a color version, they'd turn around and stab me in the back and release it in color. And they were very adamant. So they actually truly used black and white film, black and white techniques for the development of the film, and then to put it out. But this was at a time where nobody was doing this. I mean, nobody was doing black and white anymore. It was sort of like shunned, and the studio was really worried that people would not like going backwards to a black and white film.
Well, and even the company that developed the film had not developed black and white film in 7 years before this. So it really was a kind of a unique artistic step back.
You know what? You said something a second ago that I thought was interesting. I never thought about. In a way, it is a sequel to the other movies.
It just seems like a continuation of the story.
Right. This could be part of the Frankenstein franchise. If you watched right now, I think if you watched the Boris Karloff Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, Son of Frankenstein, Ghost of Frankenstein, you could say, now, 30 years later, we have Young Frankenstein. And you'd buy it. You would think, okay, it's just all of a sudden it takes the hair turn into a comedy, or hair pitch turn into a comedy, but it fits the style, it fits the shooting, the cinematography, the lighting, it all works.
I would argue that it is even more of a Frankenstein movie than the other Frankenstein movies that we've had more recently that I just didn't think were that great.
You
Some
mean
of the
like
newer
I,
iterations?
Frankenstein?
Possibly.
That was horrible.
Oh boy. Talk about shooting for the stars with that movie.
That was horrible.
I mean, I think I got 30 minutes into that and I was like, I'm done. I can't do this. They're killing Frankenstein for me.
Back to the movie here, right around second 41, when we see the two strikes of lightning, the sky's flashing, it goes to a black. This is one of our first just a natural go to the next scene without a wipe or something silly. We see lightning flash, and then all of a sudden it goes black, and then a slow fade into the scene as the camera's pulling away from what looks like some kind of almost dungeon-like, very rock-like structures. And it's an interesting choice for Mel Brooks and Gene Wilder to make right here, because we hear like a guttural, almost like a hulking monster almost sounding effect. We just have this, and it's going to end up being a red herring, throwing us off because it ends up not being. But I love that little touch because once again reminding us it is still a horror picture.
Well, and one of the things that I thought when I heard that, and then I realized that it was Dr. Frankenstein, is that it's almost him embracing that Frankenstein monster and that whole idea of, regenerating life. And
when his character changed.
His character
completely
is
changing.
definitely changing.
Well, I'll go to Matt first because he's the newest member to have watched this. I mean, he had not seen this movie until this project had come up, and Walt, you suggested he take it home. And you may not remember, but I'm going to ask you, when you first started hearing the grunting, we were looking for whoever left the violin, whoever left the cigar. Did you at all think that maybe we were going to be cutting to who it was, or did you think it was to a monster, or did you think it was Gene Wilder?
Wow. Well, yeah, I don't know if I can remember seeing that for the first time and thinking that, but I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if, that was my first thought would be, whatever this grunting noise is, oh, now they're showing us who left the violin, and it's probably some big monster, whoever it was, but...
So that's what I thought when I went back and rewatched it and prepared. And if I try to really only look at this minute as a minute and pretend I don't know what's coming, these first few seconds when we come back from the lightning flashes, I was like, oh, now we're going to get a glimpse. Maybe it's going to be a shadow. We won't know, but we'll get a sense that there is a new character lurking in the castle. Turns out that's not the case, but it does, for me, set up that premise that I was tricked first thinking it was going to be, and then it turns out not to be.
It's almost more of a surprise that it's Dr. Frankenstein than it actually is.
Well, and
someone else.
Well, here's an interesting thing, because if you believe it's some kind of lumbering other character, and it turns out it is the voice of young or Dr. Frankenstein, is this yet another tell that he's slowly morphing into what his grandfather was?
I think it is.
I think so too.
Yeah.
And I hadn't seen the movie probably in 15 years or so. It'd been quite a while, and or at least I'd seen bits and pieces, And going back and just watching this minute, I was even thinking, oh wow, like I don't even remember the monster yet. And so I immediately thought it was going to be the monster.
They do such a good job throughout this movie of just keeping us on our toes and baiting us and switching all the time.
Yeah, I think there hasn't been really a minute or no more than a minute or two goes by where we don't have a bait and switch where which way is this story going? Are we going to lean to a horror moment? Or are we going to lean toward a comedy moment? And it's always keeping us on our toes.
It is. I would say that we probably have not gone through a week where we have not had the bait and switch talk because of this. It keeps you in that horror movie or monster movie mindset, but also keeps you on your toes waiting for the next good joke to drop.
Given what happened in the room last week when we went past all the actual real heads, this right around second 47, 48 to 50 as we're slowly coming into this room, we've got an interesting ornament on the wall. Do you think this came from Bob's Head Shop too?
I'm guessing it did. And I've seen this head pop up in the castle several times earlier in the film, and I've initially tried to kind of figure out who that was, but it's also in the 1931, nearly that exact head. So I'm guessing it had some kind of significance in the 31 version. And
is that probably a set piece possibly from 31 as well?
Possibly a set piece, yeah, could be. But that is interesting. I'd love to know who or what that is.
It just got me thinking from when we, had our little moments about asking about Transylvania is kind of a weird place to shop. You got to find hunchback clothing stores and outlets. You've got to find, where you can get your 3-year-old dead heads versus your 2-year-old and then the 6-month dead heads and where all the heads come from. Yeah. And now we've got head ornamentation to hang on the wall. I guess Transylvania is a messed up place.
Brain Emporium.
There is a brain emporium later where all the best minds go to sit. I just made that up.
That's very good. That's very good.
The true sign of an improv master. After he says the joke, he says, I just made that up.
Yeah. As we continue toward the end of this minute, the camera comes down off the head on the wall, and the grunting slowly turns into words, and we realize it is, in fact, Frederick Frankenstein reading from the book that he had just found from his grandfather. But we don't get a sense we don't get too deep into it, and all we know is it looks like Inga is in the scene, and just as the minute comes to an end, it looks like she's either asleep or certainly she's not moving.
Yeah, he's kind of lost her, I think.
Anything else in this minute then? Anything we didn't discuss that we need to talk about? Because it just ends there where we do hear off screen, and yet so simple.
This minute was great in that we kind of reach a little bit of a conclusion, but we know we're being set up for something else coming.
I want to point out one thing before we wrap this up. There was a line. Remember we had this discussion with, I think it was the week we had actor Adam Boyer with us. And I asked, why is he so adamant about finding the library? What's right. And we decided it had to be because he wanted to either wanted validation that it was for real, or he wanted to prove that his grandfather was a quack. Well, when he finds the book, a line that was left out but was in the script, not in the movie, but was in the script.
From this minute?
Okay. When he first looks down at the How I Did It, and he's looking kind of opening the pages, he says, funny it should be just lying out here on the table. I wonder what kind of alchemistic drivel this is. So he already makes a prejudgment when he first looks at it. But they decided to take that out. And I think that helps to crisp up his character progression, because at least it would, at that point, we would still be thinking he doesn't really care. He is hoping it's drivel. He's hoping it's nonsense.
Yeah, so he is. He still has that internal fight going on.
Yeah, so I'm kind of glad they left that out, because I do like where they made the conscious choice that once he's found this room, he is interested. He really does want to learn. And of course, we'll have to wait till the next minute to see what else is in this book. But had they left this line, we would have been left with him still fighting against this notion that his grandfather was worthwhile and that he was trying to prove that it was nothing but drivel.
Yeah, and I think we're going to answer some of those questions coming up.
I think so. Matt, you got anything else for this minute?
No, just looking forward to the next minute. That's what my girlfriend said. I don't have a... Yeah, all right, let's move on. Ben, your turn.
Ben, anything we left out?
No, I think we're good.
You have to bring him back tomorrow?
No, I don't.
We're going to double back and see if we can't...
Can we start this minute over again without Matt?
I feel loved, as always.
What you got?
I think we covered it all.
All right. Well, come back tomorrow, folks. Minute 34. We're already into minute 34. And we will find out what the good doctor is reading, if he's figured anything else out about his grandfather's work. And it will end with a visual gag that will turn into an audible gag, but that'll be into Friday. So you're going to have to come back for the rest of these episodes because we want to know where we're going. Walt.
No, it's okay.
You're done. Turn his mic off.
You've had your 15 minutes.
Walt, somebody wants to come on back and hear what happens in minute 34. How do they do it?
They would want to go to iTunes and subscribe to our podcast. And if you like what you're hearing, it would be great if you'd give us a 5-star rating and make a quick comment so that your vote gets counted. But also, we'd like to get that feedback from you. What you like, what you don't like, Matt. And any suggestions that you may have or questions that we might be able to answer. Also, we've been meaning to do this for a while, but we had someone come on to our Patreon page and join up with us. And there was one special person that came on early on, and I think you wanted to just mention that person real quick.
Yes, one of the rewards for the tier of support was being named an associate producer of an episode or more in a given month. And so a good shout out to Tara Bain, who is an associate producer of today's episode. Thanks, Tara, for that support on Patreon.
Thank you, Tara. That is much appreciated.
And if you want to learn more about how to support us, go to our Patreon page. It's patreon.com/The Wilder Ride. And of course, all of the information you need to social media, where you can find us online, or for Patreon is all at our website, thewilderride.com.
And so you can come back tomorrow and hear more about Dr. Frankendoodle.
And yet, it's so simple.
That face. Yes, it is, isn't it?
The last thing you see before he closes the trunk.
That face.